Another great guest on the Garber Auto Mall phone line.
Hello.
We can wiggle it.
Hey, buddy. Welcome into hour number 2 on a Sunshine Turf Friday of Helmets and Heels. Glad to be welcoming back to the program a friend of the program, the one and only Jake Asman. Jake, I think you have the unique distinction of joining Helmets and Heels as both a member of ESPN Houston and now, very proud of you, making it back to the homeland, a host of ESPN New York. You also get him online on YouTube at the Jake Asman Show, and he joins us via the Garber Auto Mall hotline. How we doing, friend?
Mia, I am doing great. I appreciate you guys having me on the show, and I'm pumped up. What a game on Sunday. Jets Jaguars for all the marbles. Who's got it better than us?
Yeah, I don't know. Jim Harbaugh maybe, but I think that last time we spoke, this was a game that so many did not think would look like other Jags-Jets games of yonder years past, and yet here we are. It's the Travis Hunter sweepstakes game, as our friend Will Parkinson coined it to me. I'm curious, gangrene coming in, banged up, battered, and bruised, a game that they probably could have had in Miami. What is the sentiment around Florham Park these days?
Yeah, it's been kind of more of the same, right? The Jets are 3-10, but if you look at how they have played, they're in all these games. There's really only been 2 games all season they've been blown out. Week 1 against San Francisco, and then they got blown out against the Arizona Cardinals. Every other game this year, they've been in. Even the Steelers game, the final score looks ugly. They led at halftime of that game on Sunday Night Football. So you look at the Jets, they're always in games in the fourth quarter. They just never win any of them. Good teams find a way to win, and the Jets are certainly not a good team. They always lose. Some weeks it's been the offense. Some weeks it's been the defense. The kicking game has probably cost them anywhere from just 2 to 3 games alone. It's a mess. So I would expect the Jets to be in a tight game because that's kind of been the story of their season. But when it comes time to actually finding a way to win, they haven't been able to do it basically all year. So we'll see if that changes Sunday.
Yeah, Jake, I saw franchise worst 5 games in which they held a fourth quarter lead, which makes me, of course, ask the question, I thought this defense was really good. What's the issue in that fourth quarter?
Yeah, I think, you look at the defense, and since they fired Robert Saleh, it's been one of the worst defenses in the league. They showed some cracks a little bit earlier before the Saleh firing, but the talent is just not as good as it's been. You still have some familiar names like Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner for sure, but you lose Jermaine Johnson due to injury in week 2. That was a huge blow to the D-line. Hassan Reddick was holding out at that point, and since he's been back, he's basically, he's basically just a non-factor. He has a half a sack and like 1 quarterback hit in 6 games. He's done next to nothing. So you start with that, and then you factor in some of the other injuries. C.J. Mosley has barely played this year. We already mentioned Jermaine Johnson. They're not the same unit. They're not as well coached as they've been. And even though maybe the total defense numbers don't look terrible, like the Jets, defense on paper doesn't look awful. When they needed to get a big stop all year, they just haven't been able to do it. And we saw that again last week against the Dolphins. They led by 8 in the fourth quarter. They blow the lead. They have a chance to get a stop in overtime. They can't. And it's one of those things that's played them all year.
So I think what you're saying, Jake, is that Jeff Ulbrich will not be elevated to the full-time head coaching position when the season is over.
Mia, I would say you probably have a better chance of being the Jet head coach full-time next year than Jeff Ulbrich currently does.
Oh, did we lose Jake there? I think we may have lost Jake. Oh, come on now. Just as he's about to go into his Jeff Ulbrich spiel, come on now.
Hello?
Oh, there you are. We got him back. It's okay.
I'm here.
RJ Saunders was heartbroken. You should have seen him almost fall out of his chair when your call dropped there briefly, Jake. But happy to have you on. Continue your Jeff Ulbrich monologue.
Yeah, I was just saying, maybe Jeff Ulbrich heard what I was saying. He cut out my phone line. You have a better chance.
Woody
of
Johnson,
being the Jet
maybe.
head coach.
Woody Johnson, too.
Maybe Woody. Look, Jeff Ulbrich was put in a tough spot. He clearly was not ready for the role, even though I guess the thought process was he would be. But it hasn't worked. It was supposed to inspire the team and spark them, and they've won 1 game since. So he's not going to be back. I think everyone around the team understands that. So you just wonder, what are the Jets really playing for at this point? And we'll see what type of effort they show on Sunday.
Jake Asman of ESPN New York, the Jake Asman Show on YouTube. You can find him at Jake Asman on X, joining us on the Garber Auto Mall hotline. Real quick on the subject of coaches, Jake, that is one thing that the New York Jets have that is the apple of the Jaguars' eye, the vacancies at head coach and general manager. I know we want to ask you a little bit more about this matchup and about Aaron Rodgers' future, but Give us a sentiment when it comes to where this team could be headed. The 33rd team is aboard to help the search process to find the next general manager and head coach. Lauren and I began the program by saying if the Jaguars were to have a vacancy, would they look at a similar search firm opportunity? I'm curious how it's gone so far from your estimation in New York.
There really has not been any names that have been mentioned since they brought on the 33rd team. From a Jet perspective, I do like the fact that Woody Johnson, who's been criticized for meddling this year, is recognizing he needs outside help to try and identify candidates. But ultimately, Woody Johnson's still going to be the one making the final decision. You just have to hope, that he hires the right people, because that's really the only way things change. Mia, you and I grew up in the New York area. I mean, James Dolan was considered the worst owner ever, and you can never win with him. And now, all of a sudden the Knicks are a legit championship contender in basketball because they hired Leon Rose and Tom Thibodeau. So, Dolan didn't change. I don't think he's this great owner. He just finally hired the right people. So you got to hope Woody Johnson could do the same thing if you're a fan of the Jets. And, bringing in Spielman, bringing in Tannenbaum, two guys that have had success in the league, especially Spielman, who did the exact same thing for the Washington Commanders last year, assisting them with their hires. You got to hope they hit on it. They hit the right people. For me personally, I would view this job as a job you don't want a first-timer, so I'd lean with someone with previous coaching experience. I think that's valuable in the New York market. That's valuable when you're talking about a team that does actually have a lot of talent that's young and still under contract for the next couple of years. But, until they get this coaching hire right, it's going to be more of the same, and that's why it's such an important offseason for the Jets to actually get it right with coach and GM.
Yeah, certainly down here as well. Again, if there are vacancies, to Mia's point. All right, Jake, let's look at the matchup on Sunday. Around here, we're talking about Brian Thomas Jr., certainly the best weapon that this Jaguars offense has. And then you've got Sauce Gardner. We're not sure, obviously, if he'll travel with him or not, but what did you think about seeing BTJ this season so far?
He's played great. Yeah, he's certainly someone that, you look at, the skill set coming out and the explosiveness. And, I know it's been an up and down, or I guess mainly a down year for Jacksonville, but I think you feel good about him going forward. It's so funny because, the Jets have a young receiver on their team in Malachi Corley. And the Jets, after they drafted him, they traded up for at the beginning of the third round. They tried to do it in the second, couldn't get a deal done, and they took Corley with the first pick of the third round. They leaked it out to everyone that, Corley was their fourth-rated receiver on their draft board. And I'm thinking, really? Like ahead of Brian Thomas Jr.? No way. And Corley could barely play, so clearly they missed on something there. And BTJ would certainly have helped the Jets this year. So, go figure with the Jet player evaluation on that one. But it should be a fun matchup. Sauce doesn't typically travel a lot, but when they are matched up, that will be fun to watch. And we'll see. I mean, the Jet offense played well last week, so I think the biggest thing we're watching here in New York is, all right, Aaron Rodgers played a really good game last week. Is he now playing that way because he's healthy, or was it just a blip in the radar and he's going to go back to being, basically average to below average the rest of the way? So, that's one thing to watch. But as you guys know, there's not exactly a whole lot of exciting things to talk about with these two teams right now.
Couple more for Jake Asman up in New York on the Garber Auto Mall hotline. Of course, we'll have Jake run through all the variety of places you can catch him, including SiriusXM's Mad Dog Radio. Aaron Rodgers, Jake, will he be starting under center for the New York Football Jets in 2025?
I don't think so. Now, I think that could change, once again, based on how he looks here down the stretch. If they hire a guy like, let's say, Mike Vrabel, would he want Rodgers to be his quarterback? Those two have a good relationship, reportedly. Maybe. But the problem with bringing Rodgers back, it's not just, he's still probably your best option when you look at some of the other, quote-unquote, bridge quarterbacks that are out there. The problem with bringing Rodgers back is if you keep him for an extra year, the dead cap on his contract, if you move off of him after the 2025 season, so next year, it's $63 million. If you move off of him this offseason, it's $49 million. While not ideal, it's manageable to do it this offseason and start fresh with a new coach and GM. So unless Rodgers plays a lot better here down the stretch, maybe would have to be willing to redo his contract once again to kind of mitigate some of the dead cap, a.k.a. take a pay cut again. I just don't see the path right now. I think he's probably not going to want to be here and learn a new offense. He's probably not going to want to deal with all that. And I think the Jets, they're just going to want to move on and start fresh. So I think it's unlikely, but he is coming off probably his best game as a Jet. He threw for 330 yards. They scored on 5 straight possessions. He looks good here down the stretch with 4 games to go. maybe it's not the craziest thing in the world for a veteran coach to come in and say, hey, for 1 year, I'll take Aaron Rodgers. We'll draft the quarterback behind him that could sit and learn, and we'll figure it out from there. But even kind of talking it through with you guys on the phone here, it just feels like a lot has to happen for that to even be a scenario that the Jets would go with going into next year.
Well, the Jaguars secondary has had some busted coverages throughout this season, so something tells me that Aaron might have over 300 yards again this Sunday. And I'm excited to see Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams again.
Yeah, Garrett has played really well this year. Certainly, continues to be a guy that no matter who his quarterback has been, he's been productive. And Devontae, he's played well too. He's not what he once was, but I still think you talk about Devontae Adams at this stage of his career, he's still a really good player, and he's still someone that defenses have to pay attention to. The crazy thing is, once again, both guys went over 100 yards last week, and Rodgers threw for over 300 yards, and they still lost. So it just everything that can go wrong for this Jets team this year seemingly has, and that includes even when they finally get really good quarterback play and they still can't win. So I have no idea what to expect on Sunday. I'm sure Aaron will put up numbers if you guys are saying the Jaguars have a lot of coverage breakdowns, and Garrett will play well, but the Jet defense has a lot of issues as well. And the Jets, by the way, I don't know if you guys have talked about this. You probably have. The Jets, I think, are 0-5 against Mac Jones. So go figure.
Yes, 0-5 against Mac Jones, 0-7, not 7-0 in anything. I don't think these days, Jake. 0-7 in one possession ball games. Before we let you go, though, since you alluded to the defensive woes, I also want to discuss the injury situation. A couple of guys listed on the injury report for this week, including Breece Hall, who did not play last week. DJ Reed did not practice yesterday. What's your expectation for who should be healthy and who won't be available on Sunday for New York?
I would be surprised if Breece Hall plays. He didn't play this past week, and the Jets actually were able to get a running game going with Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis, the two rookies they had. DJ Reed is an interesting one. He's as tough as anyone. I think if he's probably more likely to play than not, assuming he practices today, and we'll see what his official designation would be. But Breece would be the one I'd be looking at going. If you're the Jets, you're 3-10. This guy didn't play last week, and you still had a good game offensively. What's the point in putting a guy at that position out there taking unnecessary hits in a lost season? So that's what I'm looking for. I know a lot of people probably are in the fantasy football playoffs and maybe need Breece Hall and want him to play. But from a Jet standpoint, I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense to play this guy unless he's truly healthy. Putting him out there when he's not at 100%, I don't know if that makes any sense.
Jake, final thing. Trevor Lawrence obviously injured for the season, so we won't get to see him on Sunday or again this season in 2024. But you've obviously seen him up close and personal since you were in Houston. What are your thoughts on Trevor?
I don't think he's been obviously what he was supposed to be coming out of college, but I think until we see more, I mean, he's probably a league average quarterback, maybe slightly above when healthy. It's tough. I mean, he had the generational hype and the generational expectations, and there were Jet fans who were livid when they won 2 games at the end of the season in 2020, and it potentially cost them the chance to get Lawrence. But you look back on it right now, and he's kind of been just a guy, just a Jag, or a Jag, as they say, which is fitting given the team he plays on. So, I mean, look, I still think there's a lot of talent there, and I think with the right coach, maybe Lawrence could do what we're seeing Jared Goff do in Detroit. But until we see more from Lawrence, it's tough to really say he's lived up to the expectations. He's not a bust, but he's not this generational talent. I think he's probably around, the average quarterback in the NFL.
All right, Jake. I give you. I don't want to use the phrase "gun to your head" because that's a little too violent for us here in the month of December. It is the season of the holidays. So how about this? If you had to pick a name. If you had to put a finger on who will be the Jets head coach in 2025, who will be the general manager as you make your way off into your weekend here on the Garber Auto Mall hotline, who is your pick?
Ooh, GM is tough. Who I want is personally either Ray Agnew, who's the Lions assistant general manager, or John Dorsey, who's also with the Lions right now and was the GM of the Chiefs and Browns previously. I just hope they either hire the top guy or they hire someone with previous GMing experience. The coach, though, for me, my number one guy is Mike Vrabel, who I think the Jets are going to end up hiring. If I had to guess, I'm going to say it's either Brian Flores or it's Aaron Glenn. I think they're going to – if it's Flores, it's because they want someone with previous experience. He's from New York. He kind of understands the market. Maybe he could bring Josh McCown with him as his offensive coordinator. He's the quarterback coach on that Vikings staff. And then, with Aaron Glenn, there's the Jet connection. He's coming from the Lions. And then there's the obvious, no nonsense approach they think they'd be getting. But, we thought that with Robert Saleh, too, and it didn't work. So I would say it's probably one of those two. But my number one guy would be Vrabel if they could pull that off somehow.
I see you getting to talk coaching search, GM search, and I want that journey for me. Jake Asman, ESPN New York. Where else can people find you these days, sir?
You nailed it, Mia. On ESPN New York, on YouTube, and then I host on Mad Dog Sports Radio on Sirius XM as well.
Love it. What's the weekend lineup looking like?
Ooh, good question. So Sunday I'm on ESPN New York from 4 to 5:30.
Love it.
And then we got normally it's 4 to 8, but I think we have a Knicks game Sunday, so it's only a 90-minute show, and then I'll hop on YouTube and I'll give my thoughts on Jets Jaguars on my YouTube channel. So who's got it better than us talking about this game for all hours on Sunday?
Amen, brother man. Jake Asman, the one and only. Appreciate you. What a crossover, too, by the way, folks, as we take you behind the curtain. Jake also worked with RJ in Houston, and so a little reunion of sorts. Go say hi to RJ on your way out the door, sir. Appreciate you joining us.
You guys better take good care of RJ, all right? He's one of the all-time greats. He had to put up with John Granado and Lance Zierlein in Houston, and he survived. I mean, that's all you need to know about RJ. But I'll tell you what, Mia. You're one of the best. Thanks for having me on, and hopefully next time the Jets play the Jaguars, it's actually a big game and not a game we're talking about for who's going to have a better chance of getting a top 3 pick in the draft.
Jake, I don't know. He puts up with 3 women on a daily basis in a group text. So we do appreciate him. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Appreciate you guys having me.
A great
Absolutely.
Ithaca College bomber. And again, truly, I am very proud of Jake, who was 2 years behind me as we matriculated through Ithaca College. Dream job working at ESPN New York.
All right, our picks are next. We've got Taylor's picks. You are listening to Helmets and Heels on a Sunshine Turf Friday. Go see their latest work on 1010XL's Instagram or find them online, sunshineturf.info, or give Caleb and his team a call, 904-383-0243. Had breakfast with him last week. He's doing great. Family's doing great. And they will, like I said before, make your backyard an absolute dream with their turf. Our picks are next on 1010XL 92.5 FM.